This is my 2022 Trail S Ultimate 1000. It's about 110 horsepower and 1,350 pounds without a driver. I recently rolled it when I was up in Cleellum with my buddies. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah. No, boys?
Damn, dude, that's a bad spot to go.
Fuck, axle and shit.
Oh, yeah.
Just wheel.
Front axle.
Oh, no, dude.
Rear wheel.
All right, well, we gotta go get a truck and a trailer.
With my buddies, we did a big trip up in Cleellum, and the very first day that I was there, I was pushing it a little bit too hard, you know, sliding around a turn. I didn't know what was around the turn, and there was a big hole, you know, there's like a drainage ditch that came into the road, and I slid around the turn, and I was like, oh shit, smashed the brakes, but I was sliding, and my rear wheels went right into the hole, and over I went. I don't know how many times I rolled. I mean, it was at least once. And the funny thing is I forgot to strap my helmet. So I didn't strap my helmet. So the GoPro footage of me crashing is basically, you can see me slide into the hole and then it goes black because my helmet flew off. And I wish I would have strapped my helmet because the footage would have been a lot better. But yeah, you know, just pushing too much on roads that I've never been on before. I mean, this thing gives you so much confidence and allows you to just slide around, counter steer really easily. It's really easy to control, you know, with the brake and the throttle and the counter steer. And so it gives you a lot of confidence to drive it fast. And I love driving this thing. I love driving it fast. It was just it was an unfortunate situation, you know. However, on the positive side of that, I used it as an opportunity to customize the Trail S. So I love this thing, and I don't see myself getting rid of it. I mean, I feel like I'm going to have this for a long time. I'm going to drive it. I'm going to enjoy it. So if you know anything about me, you know that I love Le Mans Blue, and I love yellow accent colors. So I pulled all the body panels off of this, and I took them to a local paint shop in the Seattle area. So this is BMW Le Mans Blue. This is an actual BMW paint code. So this is auto wet paint. They painted it Le Mans Blue. They did an amazing job. It was actually a shop in Port Orchard that did it for me. It came out amazing. I love it. And then the cage, the roll cage, this comes off in about 5 different sections. So I pulled this off and I took it to Seattle Powder Coat, and Seattle Powder Coat did this for me. And I tried to match the yellow as close as I could to the yellow that's in my race car. So the yellow that's in my race car, I call it Brembo yellow, and it's actually it's called Porsche Speed Yellow is the color. So when I did the cage in the race car, Mumbre Motorsport in Germany did the cage for me, and I told them that I wanted to powder coat it as close to the Brembo yellow on the calipers that used to be on my race car as closely as possible. So he told me that it was Porsche Speed Yellow. I don't know what the powder coat equivalent of Porsche Speed Yellow is, but that's the color that is in my race car for the cage. And so I tried to powder coat this as closely as possible to that. I did a pretty good job. It's a little bit brighter than the cage in the race car, but that's okay. I mean, I still think it looks awesome. I love it. I mean, I think it looks really good. I pulled the springs off. If you want to come up and kind of get a little bit closer and take a look. Take a look at the springs. So I pulled the springs off the coilovers and I powder coated those the same color. Same thing in the rear. But I think it looks really good. And then the vinyl livery. So if you take a look at the side here, This is from my buddy Kyle. He owns a Union Speed Lab out in Union, so he's about 15 minutes away from the Ridge Motorsport Park. And so he did this livery for me, and it's basically the same color and the same kind of style and design that's on my race car, the E92 M3. So he did a really good job at this, and it kind of completed the look and tied it all together. I think it looks sick. I love it. It looks crazy. It looks like a transformer. You know, you look at it from this angle, and it gives me that race car look, that race car feel. Like when I look at the E92, I love it. I look at it and I'm like, man, that thing looks insane. And now I feel like the Trail S kind of has that same look and that same feel. And you can see that he also did like a little bit of yellow vinyl here underneath the headlights. That's kind of cool. Like I said, this thing rips. There's not too often where I'm wishing I had more power, but we're also driving a lot of kind of like tighter trails, kind of like this. I mean, it's hard pack stuff, but I haven't taken this thing out to the dunes yet. So I think if I took this to the dunes, you know, just all open sand, that's when I would think like, oh, I need more power. Like that's when I would want to have maybe like a Pro XB or some type of, you know, turbo unit that's got like 180 horsepower. But right now, 110 horsepower on a 1,300 pound machine, I just love it. I mean, this thing rips. It's like a little go-kart for the dirt. It handles so well. It is just so much fun. You can just flick this thing into turns. You can get the rear to rotate around super easily. I mean, just immediately you can get the rear to come around on you with a lot of control. And so you can immediately counter steer and be on and off throttle and just really kind of work the machine exactly how you want. That's kind of one of the main reasons why I bought this, is I wanted to be able to practice my driving when I'm not on track in the E92 M3. So what this allows you to do is it allows you to really practice your car control in a pretty controlled environment, a relatively safe environment. I mean, I know I rolled the machine. Obviously you can be unsafe in it, and these things do tend to roll quite a bit. I won't say they roll easily, but you know, if you know anybody with a side-by-side, they're going to tell you like, oh yeah, I've rolled the machine. I mean, it's the nature of the beast. It's kind of part of the game. It does happen. But you can be relatively controlled, and you can go out and you can really work on, you know, oversteer, getting the rear to slide around, and counter steer, and just kind of feeling how the brake and the throttle, you know, changes, you know, the direction of the machine and the slide and how it feels. So I really think it's going to transfer over to my on-track driving in the E92 M3. And I'm definitely not the best driver in the world at all. You know, I'm a guy that loves to drive. It's absolute therapy for me. You know, when I'm on track or I'm in this thing, the world just disappears, all your problems disappear, and I just absolutely love it. And so I just try to drive as much as I can and become a better driver, a safer driver, but faster. You know, like I want to go faster, but I want to be a good driver. You know, I used my rollover, my crash as an opportunity to customize the RZR, but then also I did damage a lot of the suspension. So especially in the rear, this rear tire back here, if you come over here, if you look back this way, this back left rear tire is super cambered in versus the right one. I don't know if you can see that very easily on video, but the right tire has a little bit of nice camber, but the left one is pretty bad. It was way worse. So after I crashed this thing, the entire rear suspension, the upper and lower control arms were pretty bent, and then I actually bent the frame a little bit on this back left side, and so we took it to a frame shop. My buddy Jason Jenkins kind of saved the day. The day when we were up doing that Cleellum trip, we put this on my trailer. He towed it to, he's got a buddy that owns like a frame straightening shop. Somehow, some way, coincidence, I don't know how that happened, but he took it and they kind of straightened it out. And the very next day, I was actually driving this thing and ripping it for the rest of the trip. So that was pretty cool. So it's much better than it was, but you know, I bent the frame and it was a bummer, man. That sucks. But I love this thing, and so that's why I kind of repaired it and put the work back into it to get it back to where it is. So anyways, I replaced the lower and the upper control arms. So these are stock OEM Polaris upper and lower control arms. And then one of the front axles actually snapped in the crash. And these 2 rear axles I think were also pretty damaged. So I actually replaced all the axles, front and rear, with a Rhino 2.0 axles from Super ATV. And so those are much beefier. I just felt like they needed to be replaced. A bunch of stuff back here has been replaced. I had to take one of the calipers off and replace that because the caliper was damaged. So yeah, so that's the rear. That's everything I did there on the rear. So on the front, this is a OEM Polaris front bumper, this black bar here. Some people call it a bull bar, but I think it matches the lines of the Trail S really nicely and looks pretty cool. I did the upper and lower control arms from Super ATV. So these upper and lower control arms they're a little bit thicker, they're a little bit beefier than the stock control arms that come on the Trail S. And then these lower ones are actually adjustable, so you can adjust the camber on these. So this allowed me to kind of dial in the front camber a little bit. What else? Moving up here, I did the Tusk mirrors on the side. So these actually don't even come with side mirrors when you buy them, which is kind of interesting. So we did the Tusk mirrors, we did the half windshield right here. This is a Super ATV polycarbonate basically roof. These seats here are bucket seats from PRP. The stock seats in here, they're fine, but with the way that I drive this thing and the way that we rip it, I really wanted some bucket seats to kind of help lock me in and make me feel a part of the machine. I love these seats. Man, I wouldn't change a thing. Like, I can't imagine not having these seats and these harnesses. So the driver harness is actually a 6-point harness. So you got the sub belt here, so this locks you in really good. The passenger harness is only a 4-point harness. I don't really have a passenger in here very often. Mostly the only time I have a passenger is when I'm a passenger and my wife's driving and scaring the shit out of me and I'm asking to get out because I don't want to be a passenger. But yeah, these seats are amazing. This steering wheel is from UTV Inc. And then this right here is a Hess Motorsport 2-to-1 steering quickener. So what this does, the stock steering on the Trail S and even just RZRs in general is really loose. It's almost like a wet noodle. So when you turn the steering wheel, the wheels barely turn. So there's so much hand over hand that you're having to do with the stock steering that it's almost dangerous. I mean, there's been a few times where I'm just ripping around a turn and you're losing track of where the steering wheel is because there's just so much rotation that you're having to do that you don't know where center is. So what this does is it basically cuts that in half. So I can turn the steering wheel like this and the wheels are going to rotate twice as much as they did with the stock steering. So that made a huge difference. I mean, this thing feels like a little race car in the dirt. It is absolutely amazing. I mean, you can be in a full drift in the middle of a turn and just kind of make small little adjustments with the steering wheel, and it just feels so good. So I also did the Gilliman Industries clutch kit and ECU tune on this. So what they do is they send you a new ECU with their engine tune loaded on it, and they send you new springs and clutch weights that you install in either the primary or the secondary clutch, but there's a primary and a secondary clutch. So I installed the springs and the weights, plugged the new ECU in, and then they also did this GGB exhaust, and so all that together, you know, the machine's probably doing like 110 horsepower, where stock I think is about 100. So that made a big difference. It's very responsive. I mean, I also did the fire extinguisher mount plus fire extinguisher. You never know. Hopefully I never have to use this thing, but boom, you just pull that out, grab this, put your fire out. And then I also did the clutch belt, little storage bracket there. So the clutch belts on these side-by-sides, I don't know if it's RZR specific, but it just chews through the clutch belts. I mean, I've gone through one. I snapped one clutch belt on this. It was a brand new clutch belt, and after, geez, I don't know how many hours, not that many hours, maybe like 5 hours of driving, the clutch belt snapped. You know, I was driving down the road and boom, it snapped. So you gotta make sure that you have an extra clutch belt on you at all times, plus tools to fix it, because it can just happen. It just happens, and then you gotta pull the clutch cover off and you gotta be able to fix it. Another kind of crappy thing about me rolling this and bending the frame is now the frame is kind of bent into the clutch cover. So pulling the clutch cover on and off is now not fun at all. It is hard to get that thing in and out. So hopefully I'm not snapping too many belts, but it will happen. And then I did these rear speakers. These are Rockford Fosgate rear speakers. You know, it's fun to just be bumping music, ripping this thing around in the trails. It just kind of amps you up and gets you in the zone to drive it hard.
2, 1, good.
So one of the main reasons that I got this thing is I really wanted to be able to practice car control while I was not on the track in the E92 M3. When you're on track and you've got sticky tires and you've got a fast car and you've got somebody in front of you and somebody behind you, it's really hard to kind of put yourself in situations to practice car control, mostly oversteer. I mean, we all know how to handle understeer pretty easily, naturally. You just pull off the throttle a little bit and the front end hooks back up and you're good. But oversteer is a lot harder to practice, and it's more of a skill. I'm still not very good at it. I feel like I'm getting pretty good at driving in this thing and controlling the oversteer in this thing and sliding this around. It just feels so easy, and that's one reason that I love this. And so I'm hoping that that transfers over to my on-track driving, because when you get into an oversteer situation on track, I mean, it's like an immediate reaction. You just have to react, right? You just got to maybe come off throttle a little bit. You got to counter steer, but you just naturally react. You don't really have much time to think. Where the nice thing about this is this gives you time to think.